Welcome, everybody. All right, we're talking about unmet needs and emotional deprivation. So, why would we talk about this? Unmet needs. Wow. Well, needs are interesting because there is a huge difference between a need and a want. And a lot of people in this day and age want something and they get on Amazon and they find it. They want something and they go out on the prowl and look for it at the local bar. They want something and they just go for it. But the deal is, wants have become really, really easy. However, it takes understanding to understand what a person needs. And they call that in relationships a love language. So a love language would be something very simple like words of affirmation, spending time together, gifts, you know, sexual intimacy. These are things that are needs that different people have that come from a very deep emotional place in their soul. And there's no logical reason why a person needs something because needs come from meaning. And that means how I see the world dictates what I need. And every person needs different things in different ways. And in psychology, needs are essentially requirements for well being, ranging from psychological needs, physiological needs, environmental needs, and also psychological desires. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a well-known theory that organizes the needs in structure with basic needs like physiological safety needs at the bottom, growth needs like self-actualization at the top. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the theory basically says that humans are motivated by hierarchy of needs, starting with the most basic, like food, water, shelter, progressing to higher needs like safety, love, belonging, esteem, and finally self-actualizations. Now, one of the most primary times in a human being's life is the first year of life. And in the first year of life, all a baby can do is cry. And all they can hope is that these creatures that produce them, mother and father, will figure out what their cries mean. Am I hungry? Am I tired? Am I lonely? Am I bored? There's all kinds of different cries that a baby has, but what the baby's trying to do is assess how safe and attached am I to the people in this world, these two creatures that decided to have a baby. Now, people that have babies and they continue to have more and more and more do a really sucky job as things progress generally when they have a baby in the first year of life because they start taking everything for granted. But the deal is the more the baby is on your radar, the more understanding you have of their needs. And so humans form their attachment with human life, their attachment with the people who they depend on, the attachment to other human beings. Their brain is structured as far as their attachment in the first year of life, depending on how well a parent interprets cries and meets the needs of the baby. So, how well they are loved in the first year maps out how well they can attach to other human beings and trust other human beings in this life. And so there's all kinds of attachment theory that we can go into, but that's not what this is about. So attachment theory is like anxious attachment, remotely attached. People that have different attachment needs, they come at it different ways based on that first year of life. And according to Maslow, the universal psychological needs, which is a self-determination theory, there's three fundamental psychological needs. Autonomy, the desire to have control over one's actions, which determines how psychotic you really are. Competence, the need to feel effective and capable. Relatedness, the need to feel connected and cared for by others. These needs are considered universal and crucial for well being and motivation. There's other psychological needs beyond the hierarchy and the universal needs. Psychological needs is like connection, control, and autonomy, self-esteem, enjoyment. These needs are often linked to the sense of belonging, purpose, and emotional well-being. So, in Maslow's hierarchy, lower level needs like safety, love, belonging, esteem are considered deficiency needs, which arise from a lack of something. And once these needs are met, individuals can focus on growth needs like self actualization, where they strive to become the best version of themselves. So, for instance, if you look at a first world country compared to a third world country, since in the third world country, it's highly likely that you are not nearly as safe as you are in a first world country. In a third world country, you're not likely to invent how to go to the moon, how to cure cancer, how to do all the hard things in this life because you're so focused on survival. However, in a safer culture, and the safer a culture is, the more dynamic of an opportunity a human being has to do to grow. And so now they can explore different thoughts like how to cure cancer and how to go to the moon and how to do very complex things. And that is because you're safe. So the need to be safe determines your ability of your brain to absorb life and to be able to grow and evolve into something greater than what you were when you were born. The people that have trauma in their life at a young age have a lot of unmet needs simply because they are not safe in the world. So their intellect comes between their need to be safe. So they have to create the opportunity to be safe by being psychotic with people, like people they're married with. They throw their temper tantrums, they drink, they smoke, they do whatever crazy shit they have to do to get attention. And once they get your attention, now they can exhibit how intelligent they are. So they have to do their intelligence in between their Broadway performances. So they have to make sure that everybody's paying attention to them in order to exhibit how smart they are and get validation from every other human being in life, especially their spouse who does not want to do this 24/7, but they demand it. And so the bottom line is that people have trouble with unmet needs in this life. And unmet needs will determine how smart that person could be, how wise that person can be. Yes, they can be smart, they can learn a lot of things, but their wisdom and applying those things that they learn is going to be filtered through how safe they feel in this life. So there's a lot of very smart people with no wisdom, no intellect. And that is because they are very good at absorbing knowledge, but they're very terrible at applying knowledge. And they're really good at thinking hypothetically about just about everything and then believing that their hypothesis is correct simply because they have to validate themselves to feel good about themselves. People with unmet needs are very complex and very hard to negotiate with and very hard to have to be with. So, understanding needs is very crucial for various psychological fields, including motivation, behavior, mental health. Now, let's talk about motivation. Well, there's two types of great big vehicles for motivation. Number one is will, and that is your will to survive. People that have strong wills are generally considered to be alphas. These are people that actually you can throw them in the middle of the jungle and they will figure out how to survive. There is a lot of willful people, but they don't necessarily enjoy being motivated by the need to survive. However, if they've gone through life with having to be willful, they have to do that. They will use that as their main motivator. Now, other people look for an emotion like anger or happiness or blissfulness or peace or, frustration and or rage, and they will use these emotions to motivate them. And so they get an idea in their head and then they find an emotion that will motivate them to do that thing. Now, these people are less functional because they don't necessarily tap into their will and they're often looking for an emotion to do anything like clean the house or wipe their butt or do anything that they have to do because they're lazy. and they can't find an emotion to make them motivated. They just sit there like a lump of crap and become more self-defeated and more depressed. So people that live in anxiety and depression, they have trouble with motivation because they're always looking for an emotion to make them do something, and they're so depressed and anxious they have no pathway to their will to actually get things done. Now if they were to think differently and go, okay, I need to get things done and then I need to check in with how I feel, now that would be a willful person. That would be the willingness to survive. But the truth is, we are a survived by the strongest species. That means the strongest will survive and the rest of you will just ride along. So let's say you've got some guy that's really good at survival, and then you got this woman who is not that motivated but has a really nice ass and really nice tits, and they like that. So the really nice ass and the really nice tits will be the survival vehicle for the woman, while the man is out there functioning. And it may be opposite. It may be the man is real good looking or whatever, but he has no will to survive, and the woman is the one that's the alpha with the intellect, the one that's out there earning the money and doing the things that have to be done. So it could be flip-flop, but the bottom line is that some people, especially people that don't have a lot of will, are always looking for somebody that is an alpha, that is a willful person, that is really good at survival, because they look at that as attractive because they would not be able to survive on their own. And willful people have a lot of resentment dragging the ass of the person that they're with because they're somewhat attractive in some way. They may not be attractive on the surface, but they may be attractive in other ways. But the bottom line is they attach to this unwillful person and they drag their ass all the way through life and breed with them and create creatures that are either willful or not willful. And there's a lot of resentment that gets formed because they're with someone that doesn't have the raw, crucial ingredients that it takes to survive. The problem with first world countries is there's a lot of people with unmet needs because they're lazy, because they're safe. And if you're safe, you're going to complain about everything. If you're safe, everything seems to be difficult. And that's the way people are, that when they are safe, they become less understanding of what it is to be willful. They do not have the desire to survive. And so they're looking to have a good time and to have great memories. And that's a wonderful thing, but you're going to have a hell of a lot more memories if you become a willful person. But you have to learn how to tap into your will to make that happen. Now, there's some people that will actually go into the military where they teach you how to be in touch with your will because you go through basic training, which is a 3-month hypnotic process to train your brain how to be willful. Everybody can be willful. The problem is that you've got these depressed, anxious people or people with OCD or other things that they avoid doing the things that it takes to survive. They get obsessed, they get locked in, and they have no ability to survive. If you go into a place where you have to survive, some people will rise up on their hind legs and do it. Other people are too lazy, will fall behind and croak off eventually. And that's, once again, the survival of the species, the survival of the strongest. All right, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to come back and talk more about unmet needs and how that affects us in this life. So come back. Welcome back, everybody. All right, we're talking about unmet needs, which is emotional deprivation. When we experience emotional deprivation in childhood, it's basically the feeling of not being important or lovable enough can persist into adulthood as deprivation mindset. We may never feel as if we have enough of the things we need. The sense of insecurity can harm our close relationships. We may expect our loved ones to let us down, never express our needs directly, or choose romantic partners who are avoidant of intimacy. And if you feel emotionally deprived of important resources like love, food, money, time, it can lead to anxiety and anger. And we may obsess over the thing we've been deprived of. Or we may begin to feel that we need to operate in an emergency mode, penny pinching, scheduling every second of our days. New theories and research about psychology of scarcity provide a whole lot of insights into how perceiving the scarcity negatively impacts our brains and behaviors. The topic of scarcity fascinates a lot of people. And the reason is because we have people that we have experienced in our life historically that have gone through periods of depression in society. And now what I'm talking about is depression when there's a scarcity of resources for the human race. And in that, there is a lot of repressed desires and things that we cannot have during those depressive pockets of our society. A lot of people, once they fall into a very strong scarcity place, like they've lost their job, they've lost their finances, they've lost their house, they lost their car, they lost everything. They may even be losing their family because they do not have the means to survive. Now, some people go into the deprivation of, this is my life, I am not a valuable person, nobody will ever hire me, I am just an imposter trying to be something that I'm not, and they go into this depressive, anxious mindset where they cannot survive, and then everything slips through their fingers, and they fail, 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 and then they end up next to Starbucks in a tent trying to survive and get their free water. And so what we have to understand is that we as human beings also have it in us to survive. So some people will take the loss of a job, the loss of a car, the loss of your house, the loss of your income, the loss of a lot of your securities, and they will work with what they have and start thinking about, I'm grateful for the things that I do have, and I'm going to build on it. And I'm also going to believe in myself that I'm going to make it through this so that I can take my family into the future. Now, other people will dig down deep, but most people are going to allow the circumstances to mow them down and to not survive. And if you're in a family and married to somebody that freaks out when there's no resources, that comes from their childhood. Oh my God, we don't have anything. Oh, oh, oh. And the other one's like, we're gonna make it. It's okay. But I know I can do this. It's gonna be all right. It's gonna be tough right now. We're gonna live on very little right now, but we're gonna make it. That's what it takes to survive. Now, you've got a lot of freak out people. That's the vast majority of the human race. And then you've got people that know they can make it. You know, it's really important that how scarcity affects our thinking. A scarcity mindset narrows our time frame, causing us to make impulsive, short-term, emotional decisions that increase our difficulties in the long term, like putting off paying credit card bills, not opening bills, taking out all of our savings to pay something. We have to have a strategy during scarcity. Poor farmers in India actually perform better in cognitive tests at the end of the harvest season when they are flush than in the beginning when they're running low on money. And the effect is the equivalent of a drop, you know, in their ratings of happiness. But dealing with extremely limited resources increases the problems and the barriers we have to deal with. So there's a lot of people that made it through the 30s, the Great Depression, and they had very little resources and they starved and they maybe ate or they had to hunt for their food and they basically made it through And once they made it through and they prospered, they lived like they did when they were in the 30s with nothing. They stuck everything away in the bank or wherever they could hide it, and were digging holes in the backyard to put their money in, or storing it in used cars that they never use again, and hoarding and doing all the crazy things because it was so traumatic to go through the depression. They are going to live with the minimal strategy and just tuck their money away, 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 and never actually live their life to the full extent of what their resources offer them. If you want to overcome the scarcity mindset without going too far and becoming complacent, there's things you can do. One of the things is to practice gratitude. Deliberately focusing your mind on what is good about your life, including the people who support you, the sense of community in your neighborhood, your achievements, your fitness, your healthy lifestyle. This can stop you from magnifying the importance of any one scarce resource like time or money. The also is, don't compare yourself with other people. If you're going to do this, you're going to drive yourself crazy. You will always be exposed to people who have more time, more money, more possessions, more experience, and you can envy that all you want. But in reality, you don't know what it's like to walk in that person's shoes. You don't know how they grew up. You don't know how miserable they are with their spouse and their life. You don't know what they're going through. Just because they have a mansion doesn't mean they're completely happy. Just because they travel the world doesn't mean they enjoy traveling the world. They travel the world just so they can rub it in everybody else's face, when actually somebody who has much less money and much more joy in their life would really enjoy the vacation that this crazy person who has every kind of endless dollar in their life is not enjoying. It's sad to see people with resources go out and have vacations that they don't enjoy. They find reasons to complain. It's crazy. In reality, you don't know what it's like to walk in people's shoes, and that's what you have to remember. Don't compare your inside to everybody else's outside. How people look on the outside, which is really depressing when you look at Facebook. Everybody likes the lipstick on a pig, when actually there's a whole lot of pigs out there. And the truth is, most people are not nearly as happy as they personify themselves to be. And you also have to learn to stop obsessing. And that means it's easy to get caught up in mental scripts about all the wrong decisions you made, or worries about what if. Breaking the cycles requires a lot of effort and preparation. So you want to make a plan for what you will do. And when you catch yourself ruminating about what you've lost. The bottom line is that we have to be joyful in this life. Not happy, joyful. And that's a choice. It's a choice, and it's a choice to survive. Getting up and getting active activates the left side of your brain, which breaks the depressive emotional focus. You take a walk, you call a friend, you tidy up your closet, you read a book. You've got to use your prefrontal cortex so that you can overcome the amygdala, which will take all the dopamine and serotonin and embellish how you feel. Depressed people have a hyperactive brainstem and a hyperactive amygdala, which surrounds the brainstem, which controls their emotions. And if all your highways are super highways in your emotional center of your brain because you only do what you feel, you're going to neglect your prefrontal cortex, which is what makes you human. That's your executive functioning. That's what makes you wise. That's what makes you have the angle above other people. That's what makes you original in your thinking. And what we have to understand is comparing yourself to other people and obsessing on what you don't have is going to create a very depleted mindset. You also have to understand that you develop narratives about life, and how we do that is understanding one basic thing. All of our memories in our life are created by how we feel about what happened. So when we think about what happened in our past that traumatizes us, or memories that make us happy, we remember the memories through how we feel. And then what we do is we pull from those memories the things that reinforce how we feel, and we leave the rest of it behind. And so you could go on the same vacation and both of you walk away with two different types of memories because one had an emotional attachment in one way to the memories and the other had a different emotional attachment to the memories in another way. So what's important to one person, what's remembered by one person is not remembered by the other person, and both of them get frustrated because one doesn't remember and the other does, and everybody thinks they remember the same way. You don't. You remember through the filter of your feelings, and your feelings dictate what you're going to remember and what you're not going to remember. You also have to take preemptive measures if you want to have better needs met. Make a list of when you go to the supermarket so that you take advantage of your time there. You want to have automated appointment reminders and deposits into your savings account that are automated so that you don't have to think about it. Don't take your credit card to the mall. Take a friend instead and take cash. Pay cash so you see how much money you're actually spending on your impulses. The other thing is, if we want to have our needs met better, don't be greedy. When resources are scarce, people get competitive because they think that more for somebody else means less for you. And in fact, when you help somebody else grow their business, they may be more likely to refer extra business to you or share resources with you. So, being helpful to others in their success may beget your success. And even if it doesn't beget your financial success, it may beget some experience that you're going to need in the future to be successful yourself. Have you ever felt your emotional needs are usually neglected by people you love? Oftentimes, if you ask a person who's married, does your spouse understand you? Immediately they say no. And that goes both ways. And that's because people develop narratives about each other that are negative and they form resentments, and then they have to breed with this creature that they married that they cannot stand. And so people that form narratives about each other when they're married oftentimes carry a lot of resentments and they don't understand each other. The whole point of marriage is understanding who you're married. You do not know them, they do not know you. You may be married 50 years and it is a high chance that both of you are going to say the other person doesn't understand me. That's your whole job when you're married. When you're married, you need to learn how to see the world through your partner's eyes and understand that they're very different than yours, and celebrate your differences and understand your differences and have humor in your differences. People love to drag their partner into the way they see life, and they can't even imagine that you see things any different than the way they see it. And that's narcissists. That's your egotistical creatures, selfish, that we have the whole world full of. And we have a bunch of people who bred and are married and are stupid because they want to drag you into believing and seeing everything the way you see it instead of the way that they see it. And that's called abuse and neglect. So, if you're married to a narcissist, I'm sorry. If you are a narcissist, shut the hell up and start listening to your partner and understanding how they see the world differently than your ugly ass. The emotional deprivation schema has your brain saying you have real legitimate needs and you're being ignored. Well, this sucks. You should be angry, but hey, you got to take this far in life. If your needs are not being met, you have a thing called boundaries. This is what I can do, this is what I can't do. This is what I'm hearing from you. This is how I'm receiving you. That's called communication. A lot of people that have unmet needs don't communicate their needs. They don't even know what their needs are. And the deal is, you got to reach inside yourself and go, what do I need to feel loved? You know, if somebody needs giving gifts and you're married to them, you better be pretty damn good at giving gifts because that's a need for that person. If you want to be close to that person, if you want them to feel safe with you, don't say I'm really bad at giving gifts. Shut the hell up. You married them, deal with it, grow up, step into the role, understand you're married to somebody that likes gifts, so you better get good at it. Imagine your brain saying the kind of thing, that around people that are emotionally giving to you, and you're not thankful. You've got to be aware of people in this world and how they see you. You've got to mirror people. If you're going to communicate with another human being, you can always tell a narcissist because a narcissist never changes how they talk. They simply make you come to them. So if they're a fast talker, they're going to be like, blah, 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 and they say all their stupid stuff. And the other person's supposed to just catch up with them. Well, if you're with somebody who is more peaceful and slower and more deliberate, you have to slow down so that you both can form a bridge of communication where you understand each other. So narcissists don't mirror their audience. They try to make their audience come to who they are. You can't do that. You've got to mirror people, mirror their energy, and that shows that you're a good communicator. There's signs of emotional deprivation in human beings, and we all have to be aware of that. Assuming neglect where there isn't any, sulking a lot, you know, feeling lonely and misunderstood, feeling resentful and angry, behaving passive and aggressive, which means that you hold it in, and then you blow up and act like you're psychotic. Being cold to others when they're trying to get close, or not, or giving them their own medicine like you believe they deserve. Feeling this might but what if you understand those features about yourself, you probably understand if you're exhibiting anger, if you're passive aggressive, if you're always lonely and misunderstood, if you always feel like a victim. You have a lot of unmet needs, and yes, you're a high maintenance turd, but that's the way it is. There's a lot of people like that, and so it's good to recognize that you have a lot of unmet needs, and you also have to understand that you got to get better at communicating your needs. And that comes with the word prefer. Prefer means I'm not expecting the world to, kiss my butt. The world is not going to kiss my butt. As a matter of fact, I'm not nearly as important as I think I am. And once you come to that realization, you also realize, hey, I'd prefer to go to this restaurant. I'd prefer to do this tonight. I prefer to do this on the vacation. If you operate in preferences, you communicate your needs without shoving them down everybody's throat. And that's called grace. That's called respect, which means that you communicate in a way that you're not trying to set up a battle make everybody do what you want. Preferences lead you out of depression. Expectations lead you into depression and anxiety. So, if you think in terms of a preference, I prefer, that means you're not going to offend anybody, but you're going to teach people how to love you by communicating what you need when you're going places and when you're doing things. It's up to you to teach your emotional needs. Preferences are the key to doing that. Think about what you needed as a kid. Just spend time empathizing with your child's self. Maybe you needed a parent who sat down with you after school or really wanted to know what you were doing. Or maybe neglect was substantial and they didn't show up to your games and they didn't care about how you played and they didn't care about your friends and they just threw you out the door and said go find whatever and come back when dinner time. If you had parents like that, like a lot of people have, there's a lot of unmet needs in your life. Whether you put yourself with people who don't get it, sometimes people with emotional deprivation are drawn to people like their parents that are cold and callous and breeding stock. That means they bred, but they're not people. All they are is people who like to screw, and they don't care about the results of getting pregnant because all they care about is creating something that represents them in this life that they can call themselves dad or mom, but they don't care about raising you. There is so much breeding stock in this culture, in this world. There are lots of people who love to breed, and they have no desire to raise what they bred and created. It's really sad. About 50% of the population of people that get married and have children do that, are breeding stock. No emotional attachment whatsoever to their children. They just have to have something that represents their narcissistic self on the planet generationally. All right, we're going to take a break and we're going to come right back. Welcome back, everybody. We're talking about unmet needs, emotional deprivation. The effects of emotional deprivation can be far reaching, affecting people both physically and mentally. And for that reason, extreme versions of the emotional deprivation can become a disorder. And there's a lot of forms of emotional deprivation that can impact how a person thinks, feels about themselves. And they may not have been given love, affection, nurturance. They may have been deprived empathy, or they may not have had anyone to rely on for support. Quite frankly, if you have one decent parent, one caring parent, you are very fortunate. To have two, you are very rare to find. Emotional deprivation in childhood usually manifests as feelings of loneliness, depression, anxiety. And as a result of how those needs were catered to by their caregivers, because a lot of people don't remember how depressed, how lonely, how anxious they were as children, but you don't realize that that has programmed and mapped your subconscious and the value you have in yourself. People like this are really easy to find. If you give somebody a compliment, you did such a great job at this. No, I'm just average. No, that's not what it, no, I'm not that good. No, no big deal. Oh, you don't have to tell me that. So you get people like that. That tells you they were deprived as children. People that can't accept compliments are emotionally deprived people from their childhood. You know, if they would just say, thank you, even if they don't believe it, just say thank you. You're actually going to remap your brain if you take a compliment and say thank you. You don't have to say anything else, just thank you. And what you're starting to do is receive the love that you're given in this life. That's a big change. That's a game changer for your brain. People that can't take compliments make everybody in this life miserable because you have to work 10 times harder to give that person a compliment. And if they're in your family or you're married to them, you don't ever want to give them another compliment again because they don't receive it. They make you work 10 times harder just because they can't just say thank you because their ego requires you to go through 50,000 hoops and they never receive the compliment you give them in the first place. So all the work is for nothing. And then they get upset. Well, you never give me compliments. You never say nice things about me. That's because you're a pain in the ass and you never accept what a person's saying by saying thank you. Children with emotional deprivation feel alone and empty. Extreme emotional deprivation within infancy can cause failure to thrive, leading to growth issues, developmental delays. So they become clingy. They become people who like the narcissist and need the narcissist and are easily groomed by narcissists because narcissists love codependent people. And codependent people love narcissists because they will accept all of you're crazy, you did this, you are dumb, you are this, you are that. Because narcissists love to tell the world what they are, and codependent people love accepting that they are crazy and that the narcissist is right about everything, and they love to be groomed. Well, that comes from the failure to thrive, leading to these growth issues. Narcissists also come from the failure to thrive because what happens is in their childhood, their parents are so crappy and so detached that the kid has to figure out how to be an adult at a very young age. And by doing all of these adult decisions, they make their adult brain at 12 or 13 or 10 or 9 or 8 or 7. They have to do that and they develop their adult brain and they never change their adult brain. So throughout the rest of their life, because they had crappy parents, breeding stock parents, they basically had to form their adult decisions at an early stage in life, which means that throughout the rest of their life, their adult brain's going to come from that age in which it was formed. And that means all their decisions are going to be very selfish because they're children and they're selfish. And that is the pocket of life that they come from, and that creates the narcissist. Alongside of feeling loneliness, depression, anxiety, emotional deprivation in adults, manifest as viewing innate needs like unimportant or secondary to other people. That means you're always in a one down position. People with emotional deprivation may also have the view that strong people do not have emotional needs. Therefore, they may attempt to push down their emotions, avoid talking about their feelings or needs, act tougher than they are. Those people may also have issues with health behaviors like eating disorders and drug abuse. But oftentimes, people that push down their needs and push them aside assume that strong people are not needing to understand your feelings, are not needing to understand what you're scared of, not needing to understand what you're worried about. Well, strong people need that too. That's what makes them strong, is because they are aware of their emotions and they're aware of how they're treating their environment and seeing their environment and assessing their environment. And they're also operating from the sense, if they're a strong person, that they can overcome whatever obstacle comes their way. Emotional deprivation may result in someone attempting to cope with their difficult beliefs in a lot of different ways. Number one is avoidance. Number two is overcompensating. And number three is surrender. So, avoidance. Some people with emotional deprivation may try to avoid things like situations in which that idea is triggered. For example, they may avoid relationships because they believe them to be unfulfilling. They may sidestep talking about their needs in order to circumvent conflict, the disappointment, and having those needs left unmet again. So they set the stage that their needs are not important. So they avoid and avoid and they avoid talking about their needs. They avoid because they don't want conflict. And of course, they love narcissists. So narcissists are going to tell them they're crazy anytime they open their mouth anyway. So the bottom line is that a lot of people use avoidance as a way to go through life, and that means their needs were never met when they were children, and they don't know how to meet their needs, so they just avoid. Then there's overcompensation. These are I'm a giver. I'm a giver people. Giver people are always the last to receive, and they are massively neglected, and they're not victims because they choose to be givers. That's their coping skill. Some people with emotional deprivation overcompensate by their beliefs by acting in opposition. So, what they may do is they may act clingy, express their needs vocally, give a whole bunch of gifts to people that don't deserve it, make people more important than they are, blame other people. They oftentimes have a lot of negative resentment that they don't communicate. So, people that overcompensate may make the person feel uncomfortable or vulnerable as it goes against the beliefs of their ideas. Discomfort will offer them to want to create attention. So they may create attention by doing positive things, like interjecting themselves and overcompensating by doing things that they'd never been asked to do, doing things way above and beyond. And everybody goes, wow, that's an incredible person. But what that is a very insecure person trying to display how valuable they are to everybody else and loving to get that attention because they never got it as a child. Overcompensation also can work in the negative. So that means they create arguments, they complain, they have victim themes. And so everything is a Broadway production for them because they have no way to get attention but use negativity. They also need affection, they need empathy, and they need protection. And if you understand that and you're with an overcompensated person, the remedy is, despite how heinous that human being is, you want to give them affection and empathy and protection. Those are the things that they need to calm down. Then you have people that surrender, and people that have this thing have some. They surrender. They give into the belief that their loved ones won't meet their needs of love, empathy, and safety, so they just don't need it anymore. So I'm just here as a functioning thing. I'm here to give. I'm here to make an income for my family because my whoever I'm married to is a jerk who cares only about themselves, and they always want everything the way they want it. So I'm just here to function as a serving piece for this other creature that I'm married to who poops and pees and acts like they're God on the planet. And so I'm just here because I have to be here. So they surrender. And so when you surrender, that means you're not going to have your needs met and you're not going to communicate your needs because everybody else's needs are always more important than you. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and they manufacture that. So if you're a surrendering type of person, you're going to have a lot of trouble trying to get through life and set boundaries. So it's very important to understand that you have to take charge of your life and you have to take charge of healing. So, emotional deprivation stems from the amount of nurturance, empathy, and protection you receive as a child. Nurturance relates to the warmth, attention, and affection of families and friends. You want to exhibit that in your life to receive that in life. You also want to get really good at empathy. That relates to being understood and the validation of your feelings and other people's feelings. What people want to have relationships in life is to be heard. And if you're a person that is willing to listen, you are a kind of person that is invaluable. Empathetic people are really good listeners and really good at validating, and they do not have to agree with anybody that they're communicating with. Also, protection relates to strength, direction, and guidance. So, people that develop a really good relationship with their self, that develop met needs, become more decisive and less apologetic. So instead of saying sorry, 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 sorry all the time, they're like, okay, if we're going to go to dinner, I'd like to go to this, this, or this. Okay, if we're going to go on vacation, this is the kind of vacation that I need. This is what I'm looking for. This is what I would like. Doesn't mean we're going to do everything that I want to do, but that's what I'm looking for. So decisive people have a lot of their needs met. If you, as a codependent person or a person with unmet needs, can understand how to become more decisive and understand that you can always change your mind, you can always adapt your decisions. If you are a person like that, you're teaching people how to love you. That means your needs are going to be more met. So, indecisive people are depressed, anxious, obsessed kind of people. They have a lot of defense mechanisms and they're very hard to make a decision and they want to blame everybody for the decisions that they make. And so they're miserable people to be around, unfortunately, but there's so many people you can't avoid them that are like that. So the bottom line is the more decisive you become, the more fulfilling your life is and the more of your needs that get met. You know, it's obvious how our childhood upbringing, the decisions of others, and a position of power and influence, like your parents and your siblings, set your mindset when you're young. And it's been said that our subconscious mind is forming until the age of 6 before our conscious mind takes over. There's a lot that happens in a human being when they're first born. And this affects our ability to have relationships, our coping strategies, even our level of codependency. Because if you have parents that always put themselves before you and don't understand your needs and don't treat you like you're a human being or important or only pay attention to you when it makes them look good, now you've got yourself in a situation where you're going to have a brain that has got tons of unmet needs in this life. And of course, there's a good chance you're either going to be codependent or narcissistic because you have to start making adult decisions because your parents can care less. You know, if you want to heal, you have to imagine yourself like a 5-year-old and give yourself a hug. Love on your young self, speaking kind words and empower how you survived a very difficult childhood. Introduce more playfulness into your life. Learn how to have joy and fun. If you want to be lighthearted and spontaneous, set aside your inhibitions. And sometimes you're going to have to fake it till you make it. Yeah, fake it till you make it. You also have to do things that your heart wants to do, and that's needs. So here's what it is. Passion and meaning come from what you are good at in this life. And that may be something that you haven't discovered. Purpose is who do you want to give it away to? People that discover that become much more substantial in this life. You don't want to hold back on your feelings in relationships. That's what feelings are. Feelings are for relationships. It's about validating each other's feelings. That's why you're in a relationship. It's not logical to-do lists. It is feelings. That is the whole purpose of a relationship. That's why you want to be around people, is how they make you feel and how you feel when you're around them. You want to have good relationships. That means you need to be a grateful person. You have to also make peace with your past. Give yourself unconditional acceptance of where you've come from. Know your parents were probably doing the best they could with what they had, that they were very limited and they're probably just a product of what they grew up with. And you have to also understand that when you're an adult, you need to look at your parents with the name that they have as the person that they are rather than your parent. And you need to humanize that person instead of referring to them as your parent. Because if you do that, you're going to heal your relationship with them and understand that they're just as human as you are. That's our show. I want to thank everybody for listening. I love hearing from you. You can do that on our webpage at libsyn.com, libsyn.com, Dr. Gary Bell's Absurd Psychology. Now remember, anger is an indicator of unmet needs. Criticism, analysis, insults are a result of unmet needs. Also, children don't know what they need, they express their needs through their behavior. Also, emotional eating is all about